Hello and welcome back to For Fox's Sake. This is the Women's Football Show. I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Garry. Tom is a women's football writer at The Guardian, but with lots of women's football knowledge and insight from his time in The Telegraph and the BBC as well. So a very experienced and knowledgeable guy, and we're so happy to have you today. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, pleasure, Lily. Hi, and good evening, and thanks for the very kind words. It's really nice to have a chance to chat to you.
Brilliant. So before we get started, just a reminder for the viewers about our website, forfoxsake.news. Subscriptions are only £5 a month, £50 for the entire year. It's the price of a pint a month. Honestly, it's a great deal. And we've got so much great content for you, including interviews with former players, match day reaction, opinion pieces, quizzes, and of course, a dedicated page to Leicester City women. And we've got a brilliant featured article from former Fox Chloe Hudson-Jones, where we talked all things January transfer window, including a bit about Sarah Mayling, who was her teammate at Birmingham City. So coming up today, we're going to be dissecting what turned out to be a pretty catastrophic weekend across the club, with the sacking of Martí Cifuentes on the men's side. But primarily, we're focusing today on the loss to West Ham United. A disappointing result, Tom, in the end. I felt it was against the run of play slightly. Rather unfortunate. Again, West Ham are placed 11th in the league, and that's probably a team that Leicester would expect to beat and would want to beat. So, an unfortunate one that. What are your sort of thoughts and opinions?
Yeah, a few things that stand out for me. Firstly, I think probably Leicester can count themselves quite unfortunate to have played West Ham now. Obviously, the Hammers getting a little bit of a new manager bounce with Rita Guarino coming in. And it was probably slightly the wrong time to play them, I think, in terms of the momentum that they've started to build a little bit of a lift for themselves off the back of their cup win against Newcastle United, and they're getting, they're all trying to impress the new gaffer, and sometimes you just get these little new manager bounces, and I sensed that perhaps Leicester would have loved to have played this fixture back in November, early December. But that's just the nature of the game, isn't it? Sometimes you're fortunate with those things, and sometimes you're unfortunate. In the game itself, it was I think a fairly even game that perhaps even Leicester edged it. Certainly they appeared to have slightly more efforts on goal and generally look a little bit more of a threat. But West Ham took the chances, and the moments sort of fell their way. So I guess I come away from it thinking that it was one of those games where Leicester might feel they maybe did enough to get something, but you probably also wouldn't say it was an absolute travesty that West Ham managed to win. They're not unworthy winners, but equally Leicester were definitely in the game and could have easily got something. So could have gone a different way another game. Not a total disaster, but I guess, if you forgive me for the long answer, just a slight worry now, because that was one of those fixtures where you'd like to really get something at home against another side who will be down there. So it's getting quite tight and congested now, and it could prove to be quite an important game that, come the end of the season.
Well, I think that was going to be my second question to you. It's kind of a dangerous game to play, losing against teams that are close to you in the relegation battle. It could potentially put Leicester in a bit of a perilous position come the end of the season. I think those points would have been important, and you do have to give credit to West Ham and the fact that they took their chances. That Verena Hanshaw goal was nothing short of very impressive. I mean, I watched it live and I went, there is nothing Olivia Clark could have done about that, because she had to stay central on her line, because Vivian Assayi was also standing over the ball, so she didn't know if it was going to come out towards the rest of the players. So it was pinpoint and pretty awesome, despite it being against Leicester, unfortunately. And then Shakira Martinez, what a strike that was. And like you say, it's all about impressing the new manager, and that will certainly put her in Guarino's good books, I think. But a shame for Leicester, because I thought, Sarah Mayling, Ashley Neville, the new signings, that kind of back five wing back role of them two gave Leicester a lot of opportunities, and I think, yes, they had more efforts on goal, but it just didn't seem like they could put away their chances, did it?
True, but what I would say on that front, though, is for supporters who might be worried, just it's going to take a little bit of time, isn't it, for all the new players to kind of start to click together and totally get in sync with each other. So I wasn't too alarmed by that, and I think that I'd like to see us a little bit more from Alicia Lehmann when she came on in the second half. Maybe you're sort of hoping for that bit of magic. She didn't have a bad game, but there's a lot of excitement around that move, isn't there? But again, a player who I just probably needs a little bit of time, probably needs a bit more of a chance to show Leicester her absolute best once she's settled in. So I wouldn't be too worried. I understand what you're saying. I think it's going to be it's going to be close. It's going to be close for a lot of teams down there. Obviously, Liverpool got their long-awaited win, their first win of the season, that they had craved for such a long time, and West Ham getting an important win, so it brings it together. But Everton, of course, on Friday night I went to Goodison Park and saw Everton lose to Brighton, and Everton's home form is really poor. They've lost every home game, so they're really looking low on confidence at home. So it's really, really. You could throw a blanket between 4 or 5 sides in that bottom half, and I wouldn't panic just yet if off the back of that one disappointing result if I was a Leicester fan.
Yeah, I think so. I think because in the past WSL games have sort of like the league's been decided between 1 or 2 games at the top, and it's similar for the bottom. It's who's going to beat the bottom team to stay up. So perhaps that's where some of the panic is coming from. But I think the league's a lot more competitive, especially in the last few years. And I do agree with you. I'm personally not panicking too much, but you can understand why perhaps fans would have been disappointed with that result.
Yeah, for sure, and particularly at home, no one wants to lose at home. But generally speaking, I'd like to say it does feel as though there's been a lot of positive things about Leicester so far this season. When you think where they were with the change of manager right on the eve of the campaign, and just generally the relatively low budget compared to the clubs who've got men's Premier League affiliation right now, who are in the top flight with their men's teams and have an abundance of cash. Liverpool, for example, that Leicester are doing well to be where they are and to have the points they have on the board. It was an excellent first sort of third of the season, was really strong. And I think generally Rick Passmore and his staff have done a really solid job with what they've had available to them. So to have the points on the board is kind of enviable for West Ham and Liverpool. So let's just see. It could be a scenario where a team might need to get to around the 17-point mark, even maybe, to be absolutely certain that they're going to stay up, because I think people will start to take points off each other. But let's not forget that Leicester have done well to where they are, given what they have had at their availability, and now they've got this January window. Then maybe they can cause a few more upsets in the second half of the season. But of course, everybody's strengthening. West Ham just signed Katie Zellin the other day. Of course, Liverpool have done some incredible business in this window. So it's going to be tight.
Yeah, I don't know how Liverpool managed to get Denise O'Sullivan. I was very annoyed that Leicester hadn't gone down that route, but I guess they have such strong midfield anyway.
Well, she's a great player, but I got to say, Jennifer
she is.
Falk, I think, is the one I almost think is the top signing that they've made there in goal.
Yeah, the goalie.
World-class goalkeeper. Going into a team who face a lot of shots and need a world-class goalkeeper. So there we go.
Yeah, and a bit on goalies actually, because Leicester been missing Janina Leitzig, and I waxed lyrical about her last year the end of 2025, because she was almost central to Leicester's 3 clean sheets last season, and that point that they got away to West Ham and Aston Villa. So I think she's been phenomenal, but it seems there's not been a lot of communication from the club about her circumstances, other than she is, we presume, injured. But I thought Olivia Clark has done pretty well, considering I think she did really well against Spurs in that first game. I know then we lost to them in 3-0 in the cup, but I thought she did a good job. She saved a couple of Katrina Gorry shots. And yeah, we just hope that Janina Leitzig is well and is coming back. But again, on those kind of new signings, that whole signings business, and like you were saying before, we've talked about on previous podcasts, Rick Passmore building a legacy. And I think, and I totally agree with anyone else who says that he's made some really, really smart decisions in terms of signings. I think he's strengthened in areas where Leicester have really needed strengthening. I think they had a very, very solid midfield with Sam Tierney, Olivia McLaughlin. And yes, they brought in Emma Janssen, and she's played a bit more of a defensive role. But I think Ashley Neville's been fantastic, and having those goal-scoring threats in Rachel Williams, Alicia Lehman, do you think that's going to set them up for really good stead in the season? Where do you see kind of, because I don't know if Shannon O'Brien's really hit the ground running yet. Could you see perhaps Rick Passmore's making some changes there as the season goes on? And I thought Mouchon as well. When Naomi Mouchon, when she came on, I think she should have been put on a little bit earlier. She made all the difference, I think.
Yeah, with Mouchon, it's so great to see her back, really, in recent times, because obviously the injury that she had last season, was such a blow. And I think that everybody who's ever really worked with her has always said, this is a player who can go to the very, very top. So I imagine the timing that she came on probably just still because every now and then Leicester have just been careful with her minutes still for the long-term gain. But to answer your question, what I think has been noticeable about this window for Leicester is how much they really seem to have targeted getting into more experience and getting a bit of know-how and a bit of WSL nous. They had, as I understand it, they routinely averaged the lowest starting age of their 11 in the first half of the season, such that they had the lowest average age of their team in the WSL. And that when you're in a relegation dogfight, that's often a little bit tricky because, you want people who are a bit more just have been there and done it in these kind of tricky situations before, and also model pros. And that's what you're getting really in a signing like Rachel Williams. You're getting someone who will lead by example, but also causes a bit of a different problem for defences in that she's a real handful. She's got good natural movement, strong in the air, a real threat set pieces. And in terms of Ashley Neville, for example, just one of the most dependable wing backs that the WSL has seen over the last sort of 7 years. So excellent experience, and again, a good presence in the dressing room. And I suspect those things together, Lehman similarly very experienced, obviously going way back to a really strong spell at West Ham, let alone with Aston Villa more recently. So I think all in all, it has so far been quite a good window for them, but it was noticeable. And I know they had some departures too, clearly, and obviously Cayman, who I believe that was more for personal reasons, I think, wanting to get closer to family, but particularly losing one of the only other really old players in the squad with over 30, it was vital to replace, with more experience. And they seem to have done that so far. And another loan signing coming in today, of course, from Fiorentina. So in midfield to bolster up the midfield, and just generally, I think so far Lee Billiard and the technical team will be quite happy with what they've done in the window.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Tom. We've got a bit of a kind of jam-packed fixture list coming up for Leicester. We'll get on to that in a short while. I thought actually it's important to highlight Ashley Neville's crots or schrosses, however you term the phrase. What did you make of those? Because I thought she was very clever in trying to test the West Ham goalie.
Yeah, and I was talking. That's funny you asked that, because I was talking to somebody about this literally on Sunday night. But a few of us had seen her do a crot. Are we calling it a crot? A crot.
I prefer crot. I think schross is more of a mouthful. I prefer a crot.
It is. To be fair, it is. I remember seeing her do a crot for Spurs in WSL 2 a really long time ago, and I was chatting to a colleague trying to remember what game it was because we've both been there. But long story short, it's not the first time that she's had a go from that. So I have a controversial take on this in that I actually think that teams should do that more often on purpose. Not as a accidentally shooting from what was meant to be a cross. I genuinely think that every now and then wide players should put a ball that is going to go in between the posts if the keeper does nothing, just to give them something to think about. Because quite a lot of the time, the goalie's fully expecting the cross. So there's probably goalkeeper coaches listening to this thinking, what is this guy on about? He hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. But just from an observer from the sides, very often you end up seeing the goalkeeper sort of frantically retreating to try and tip something over the bar or to claw a ball that was heading towards the top corner. And often it's actually, there's a bit more of a gap than wingers and fullbacks realise. So I quite liked it. I'm not sure whether it was on purpose, the one you're referring to, but
I think we can agree the second one was on purpose. It was very precise, and I think
yes,
it's wishful thinking, isn't it? Because it can go in, but also if the goalie doesn't deal with it properly, it might go in off the rebound. It like you say, I completely agree with you, Tom. Actually, sod the goalkeeping coaches. I agree. I think
if you let's say you're up against somebody who is truly a master in the air as a goalkeeper. Let's say someone like Fallon Tullis-Joyce, for example, or Tiana Endler of Chile. You're probably wasting your time. But just generally against most keepers, I think it's just worth every now and then giving them a little tester and seeing if they're awake or not. So I like it.
I agree. And Leicester have Arsenal coming up. We were discussing before, we don't know when that's going to be rearranged. But, their young keeper, Borba, she's still, she's finding her feet in the WSL. I think she's done brilliantly so far. But, testing the likes of her or, the young Polish West Ham goalie, it's not a bad idea at all. And I quite liked it. I think it showed that Leicester really wanted to attack. Neville doing that, it showed that they really wanted to put the ball in the right areas and get something out of it. They've still not scored more than one goal in a game apart from their Subway League win 5-1 against Ipswich Town. So I'm hoping that once the signings get to grips with the team and the team starts gelling, that the goals start to come. But it was a lot more encouraging to watch. I think Leicester had a lot more opportunities than they've had in the last 5-6 games. So that was great to hear. Let's talk a little bit about you, Tom, and about your work, your line of work. I really just am so curious how you came to work in the world of women's football, because I assume back when you started, it was pretty quiet in that area, not much to report on. So give us a bit of insight into how you started journalism and then what led you into women's football.
Sure. About it was just under 11 years ago, just under 11 years ago. Sorry, my maths is not quite there. Just under 11 years ago, March of 2015, when I started covering the women's game professionally for the BBC. I was very lucky to have a chance to take on a contract for the 2015 summer season for the BBC, covering predominantly Chelsea, Arsenal, and some WSL 2 clubs like London Bees and Reading, because I was based down in that area of the world at the time. Millwall Lionesses as well were down there in those days in WSL 2, and just had a really great experience covering that year and that season, and was able to just learn some great skills and get some good experience, and just it felt like the right thing to do to stay with it, because there were so many fascinating stories to tell. There were so many untold stories, lots of original journalism that perhaps, particularly in those days, I felt that trying to do the same sorts of things in the men's game, you were maybe just putting a drop in the ocean, or like throwing a pebble into a big river of stories, whereas here there was a chance to do lots of really original things and do something that very few other people were doing. It would be completely wrong to suggest that I was any kind of like early trailblazer for these things, because there were so many people who covered it for a long time before, like legends of the journalism sports coverage of women's football, for it, like the likes of Jen O'Neill and Catherine Ito and Kieran Tatham, Tony Layton had done stellar work for a long time. So it would be totally wrong to imply that kind of anything started around then. But what I suppose is true is that press boxes were very quiet in 2015, 2016, kind of 2017 even. But then nowadays it's a totally different scenario in that the coverage has really accelerated and broadened now with podcasts like yours and sort of club specific reporters in some cases at some of the WSL clubs. So, and I'm lucky, so I did the BBC for a while and loved it there, and then went to the Telegraph and had a great time there, just covering just women's football full time, which was a brilliant experience. And obviously England won the Euros, which helps, and got to a World Cup final. And then around 18 months ago, I had a chance to move to the Guardian, which has been a real joy. They've been wonderful. They've got a really great team who are really invested in women's football, giving it lots and lots of space. And I'm just trying to tell as many cool stories as I can.
Yeah, fantastic. That rings so true for me as well, because I think my knowledge of women's football and the women's game only really started when England made it to the semi-finals of the World Cup in 2015. I mean, I think I was 11 years old then. So, and that's when I started to really follow the game, and, having the likes of you and all those other fantastic people you mentioned cover the game was so important for me, because I'd make my dad show me all the articles and watch all the YouTube videos that were out. So yeah, I have to ask, what has been your favorite experience so far? Is there any kind of memorable women's football experience? What was kind of the highlights?
Goodness. I'll try and give a couple of different answers for you then in that case, because the ones that immediately spring to mind are probably too obvious. But
yes,
you can't not mention the 2 European Championship victories, both different in so different experiences in totally contrasting ways, but both the highlights for any football journalist. I mean, we were so lucky. A lot of my colleagues at Telegraph and now at the Guardian may have gone their whole careers without seeing an England senior team win anything. So to be able to do it twice in 3 years as a reporter was such a privilege, to be there for both. I think the first one at Wembley was just this sort of euphoric day, but also everything seemed to align. Everything seemed to kind of go well for them. Even little details like the fact that Alexander Pop wasn't fit to play the final.
To say, yeah.
When little things like that, you were just thinking, okay, the draw was quite good for England generally. Everyone stayed fit and healthy, and everything seemed, the stars seemed to align for this sort of perfect day at Wembley, and it was very, very special. And I drank a lot of wine afterwards, because I'm the sort of person who, when you got to celebrate the highs, haven't you? So when we all finish working on a match like that, which is we finished working about probably 1 a.m. after we finally finished working, then you can really kind of just start to celebrate, and that was a good night. And then the obviously the more recent Euros in Switzerland, different for totally different reasons, in that the sheer drama and stress of the whole chaotic route to the final was probably aged me about 10 years, but equally special to be there and to witness it. And I just thought that was such a good tournament. Like, putting aside any bias towards England having won, the excitement in the fixtures, particularly in the knockout stages, and how much. I mean, I think I went to. Let me do the maths for you now. I went to 5 knockout. Did I go to 5 knockout games? Yeah, I think I did 5 knockout games, and all 5 had 120 minutes in them. So just to give you a rough idea of the kind of drama, do you know what I mean? I may be forgetting one game, but either way,
I do remember.
It was.
Yeah, they were long matches.
I did a couple of other ones. I did the Germany-France one as well, where Berger made one of the best saves I've ever seen. Best saves that anyone's ever seen. It was just ridiculously good save. So those are probably the obvious answer to your question. And then I would suppose the less obvious answer would be nice things like I've been so fortunate to go home and away with England, so I've seen some really fascinating places. And my little places that will always stand out, like going to Latvia when England played Latvia away during the latter stages of the pandemic, actually. And
Was that the 20-0 one?
this was actually only 10-0 this time. They won the 20-0 at home. This was the away game that was 10-0. But there was a curfew locally, so locals weren't allowed out and about after about 8 o'clock. The match was in the evening, so we were in this completely empty stadium. Myself and the absolutely brilliant girls on the ball, Sophie and Rachel, were there as the kind of English press contingent in an otherwise empty stadium in the pouring rain, absolutely pouring rain. But you had to have this email confirmation that you were out of your residence for a reason, which was so then when we got the taxi back through the city at the end after the game and I'm getting back to my accommodation, and I'm at the door of my accommodation and there's somebody there asking to see my papers. It kind of felt very I don't know, it felt very wartime-esque. It was an odd feeling, but surreal. But those kind of fascinating experiences of seeing beautiful cities like that in an eerie curfew setting where it looks like the end of the world will kind of are life experiences that you're never going to forget. So there's been a lot of really cool things. Sorry, I'm giving you a long answer there, so I'll stop waffling. But that's a rough whistle-stop tour of what it's been like.
I was looking for a long answer, so don't worry, don't apologize. That's so cool to hear, and it's nice. We've had so many different people on the podcast so far, but it's nice to hear that each one still gets you around the world if you want it to. Journalism offers that kind of experience of going to see new places, being in different places that you're not used to, having different experiences like that. So yeah,
well,
it's all very interesting.
The same places over and over again. I went on a run of going back to because if you go to Women's Champions League, for example, you may, and because national papers may only send to some of the sort of bigger games, you end up with multiple trips to places like Wolfsburg and Lyon, which is a great, really nice city. But and Wolfsburg is a little different. It's a bit more industrial, but nothing wrong with it. And Turin, we had a run of going there, and you sort of end up going to a lot of the same place, seeing the same airport, seeing the same, and you work sort of from the most obscure places because you're just filing articles on the side of a road or in the waiting in the departure lounge at an airport or any coffee shop you can find or anywhere. So you end up going to a lot. Actually, end up going to a lot of the same places, and the countries who don't have women's football sort of strongholds, you never go to them really. So actually, this new format for the qualifiers internationally is starting to make it fun, because this year we're going to have some different trips. England have actually just announced that they're going to play Ukraine in Turkey, which is a new thing for a lot of us, and obviously got Iceland away as well. So it's throwing up new things, because we did go on a run of going to about the same cities 4 or 5 times in a row. Not that I'm complaining. Not that I'm complaining about that at all. It's not. This is get the violin out about these first.
Lots of Madrid and Amsterdam, I'm sure.
Oh,
so yeah.
Schiphol Airport. Well, I've been through Schiphol Airport more times than anyone should ever have to go through that place.
They know you by name, I'm sure.
No. But I know the layout by heart. Put it that way.
Good.
Yeah.
That's so great. Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome to hear. So back to Leicester City women, we would have had a pretty scary lineup of fixtures for the next 3 games. It would have been Arsenal, followed by Man United, followed by it's Manchester City, isn't it? WSL leaders, Man City after that. So I think we presume we haven't had much confirmation from the league, as we were discussing before we went live, about when the Arsenal game is going to be rescheduled because of their new Champions Cup format. But in terms of Manchester United, where do you think Leicester can look to exploit them and take advantage of? I think we've got to try and get some sort of result out of that if we want to maintain our position in the league. What do you think? Where do you see any weaknesses in the Man United side that Leicester could potentially probe?
If there is, I don't know if it's a weakness per se, but where there's perhaps a chance to exploit them if a team is clever is because their fullbacks really like to attack and really like to overload, which is a danger in itself. It can mean that they are exposed in those fullback positions if a team can transition quickly and can win, really move the ball fast when they win it back. So that's probably one thing I'm thinking of. And I think we've also probably seen maybe a slight vulnerability to height in the box. Which I'm clutching at straws though, because they're a really good side, Manchester United, and much better than they're getting credit for. Then it's quite a hard game. And yeah, you're right. We need to spread the word to as many Leicester fans as possible that the game this weekend is postponed. I think it's alarming how many websites around the internet I can see where it still says Arsenal Leicester for this weekend. So spread the word to all your friends. Tell them it's not happening this weekend. Arsenal are playing in the new Champions Cup. But actually, that could benefit Leicester a tiny bit, because what it will do is just give Rick Passmore and his team a few more sessions on the grass with some of the new signings. And it will mean that they're playing that game then after the end of the transfer window, which closes on Tuesday. So who knows? Maybe if they bring any more in, then they'll be available. So it's a tough run. The Manchester fixtures on paper, if you put the two sides up against each other and you played the games 100 times, most times, the vast majority of times, there'd be victories for the Manchester clubs. It's just whether or not Leicester can do something special on the day and make things difficult for them. And they've shown already this season that they're capable of doing that when they put their mind to it.
Yeah, definitely. Like that game against Chelsea, they reduced them to only a 1-0 win early in the season. And I think you're right. And I think Leicester are so good on the counter-attack. They just have to finish off their chances. I think that's the key that's missing at the moment. I feel, as a Leicester fan, that we need to put the ball in the back of the net. I think there's been so many great opportunities to do so, and I can see the players are starting to gel. But yeah,
maybe Rachel Williams against her old club, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, that could be the one.
That could be the one. I mean, we were hoping that Alicia Lehmann, and she did effectively. She forced that own goal against West Ham, so she came up trumps against her old side. So let's hope Rachel Williams can do the same. Would you? We like to do score predictions. I like to stay positive, but you can give me a realistic one if you fancy.
Sorry, I'm going to be really disappointed then. I'll say 2-1 to Manchester United. I do think Leicester will get a goal.
I agree with you. I'm going to go 1-1 and hope that Leicester get a point from that game. So, yeah. Thank you so very much, Tom, for coming on. Just a reminder for everyone, for foxsake.news, that is our website. You can subscribe for the price of a pint, £5 a month, and you get so much great content, including all of the discussions that we've had during the podcast, as well as more exclusive articles, news of signings, and then we'll do a big dissection of how the signings have got on throughout January and February in the future. So look forward to that. Thank you again to Tom Garry. Thanks for coming on the show, and yeah, see you in the next one.
Thanks. Have a great evening.